I think we're going to probably spend 3 weeks on this last week, this week, and next week as well. We'll see how far we get today. So these are two resources that I've been basing some of this on. And there's a lot of really good information out there now. One of the things that Stephen Porges talked about was how exciting it is to see people take his theory, which he's like a kind of a scientist type, not a psychology type. And then they take his theory, and then from there, it comes into all of these different arenas. So I interviewed somebody, Jan Winhall, about polyvagal system and addiction, and people are using it. Stephen Porges is connected with a company called Safe and Sound Protocol, where they're using sound and audio to work with all kinds of issues around noise and hearing and autism and different things, and downregulating our nervous system for sound sensitivities. And so there's all kinds of different ways that he's working with this. And these are two resources that we could use. So Stephen Porges and Deb Dana has done a lot of work around polyvagal system, and I love some of the exercises in this book. They're really helpful. So what we talked about last week, just as a review, we have the dorsal vagal, and that's the old system of immobilization. That's what we're referring to when we talk about freeze. And binge watching Netflix, although Netflix wasn't around even 20 years ago. Then we have a little bit newer, the mobilization sympathetic nervous system, which is fight and flight. And so when we're under threat, we'll try to get away usually, or we'll fight back. And if that doesn't work, we're not able to get away from threat, then we'll go into the immobilization. And then the ventral vagal, the social engagement, is only 200 million years old. It's the new one on the block. It's above the diaphragm, it's myelinated, it's much more sophisticated. And it's our sense of trust and safety with other people, which is most of the threats that we deal with now in our culture are social and emotional, and between people, they're relational. So the social engagement, the ventral vagal, is something that's really helpful to work with. And all of these, we all move between these. They're all kind of active more or less at different times. We can also have kind of blends of these. So we might have some immobilization, but if it's with ventral vagal, the social trust, it might be like the stillness we experience when we're doing a relaxation practice. So a lot of the ventral vagal indicates whether it's a threat or not, whether it's something that's helpful or not. The sympathetic nervous system can be a passion for what we do and for life and for engagement. And if we don't have the safety of social engagement, then it's a very different experience than if we do. So we were not fight or flight necessarily, but we might be engaged and active in the sympathetic nervous system. So they all kind of work together. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the window of tolerance, and someone referred to that a little bit ago as well. So the window of tolerance is that mama bear. If we talk about Goldilocks, we have it's too hard, it's too soft, and then we have the part in the middle that's just right. So the hypoarousal is when we go into freeze. We're dysregulated, something feels like it's too much. And hypoarousal, hypo meaning less. So we have less activity, less engagement. When we're in the window of tolerance, things feel like they're just the right amount of challenge and safety. And so we go in and out of this all the time. Sometimes we dramatically go out of the window of tolerance, and we might get emotionally flooded by something. We go into something, hypoarousal or hyperarousal. So if we go up to the top, the hyperarousal, that's when we feel anxious, angry, out of control. We blurt out something we don't mean. We're dysregulated, that it's an agitated kind of dysregulation. Hypoarousal is when we're dysregulated, but we're fuzzy, we're spacey, we're sluggish. We just feel uncomfortable, but we don't have any energy to kind of move. So when we're outside of our window of tolerance, again, we're kind of circling back to this feeling of it's involuntary. So this is something our nervous system decides for us. This is neuroception. And one of the things we've talked about neuroception and trauma is that we don't have an accurate read on situations often. And so we might be in an unsafe situation, but we're so far into freeze or hypoarousal that we don't recognize it. Or we might actually be safer than we think we are, but we're not recognizing that either because our mind is spinning. We're really hypervigilant. We're not able to stay calm. So a lot of our ease and happiness in life is to try to most of the time be within our window of tolerance, and when we're not, to recognize what triggered us and put us out of regulation, and then how can we come back into regulation. So this is everybody that has a mammal body, which is all of us humans. We all have this system. So neuroception, these are some of the ways that we can track to see if we're into a state of alarm or fear or some kind of threat. Some of it's pretty dramatic, some of it is very long term. So, muscle tension, for instance, one of the things that I noticed when I started doing yoga and meditation was that my shoulders finally relaxed. And now it's starting to be a little bit. I noticed the last several months with COVID, I've had a little bit more tension in there, but it's not that cement shoulders that it used to be. So I notice when it changes. So part of what we're doing here is we're noticing what's going on. So if you were to just kind of sit with that for a moment, you might notice, what is it for you? What normally happens? Do you notice that you stopped breathing? You're holding your breath. Lots of people start to sweat, or we just feel kind of flushed. Our heart beats really rapidly. That's certainly another one. And then I also wanted to move into, how do we feel when we're in ventral vagal? When we're not feeling threat, we're feeling a sense of connection. I love that picture of the mom and baby. It just looks so connected and trusting, and so much love there in her face, the little baby's face. So how do we feel? Safe, connected, our bodies are relaxed and regulated. So it goes without saying a little bit that we're within our window of tolerance. And we're connected, engaged. We're not dull. We're not kind of immobilized. We're engaged. We're trusting of other people. We have an ability to learn and be creative, communicate well with people. When we're in the ventral vagal feeling of connection and safety, everything happens more easily. We breathe deeply, our bodies relax, we have a slower heart rate. We don't have that pounding feeling in our chest sometimes when we get into the hyper arousal. And we don't have that I'm kind of dead inside of going into hypo arousal or freeze. So these are feelings that we all know. We all know ventral vagal. So just take a moment to maybe look at some of those words or look at that baby's face and just tune into that. I do know what this feels like. So now we're going to do some inquiry. And if you don't have anything to write on, you might actually want to get something. I'll just give you a minute for that. We're going to ask some who, what, where, when questions. And this is from Deb Dana's book that I referred to at the beginning about the polyvagal system. And in the image here, we're talking about dorsal vagal, I can't cope, I'm collapsed and shut down. Sympathetic is I'm in danger, I need to run or fight back. And then the ventral vagal, I feel connected to the greater world. So whether you want to journal about this and make notes, or whether you want to just kind of close your eyes and go into your own experience, we'll take a little bit of time for each one of those. So when we're talking about setting up the conditions where ventral vagal can be our experience, let's start with who. So who are the people right now in your life? When you're around that person, you just feel relaxed. You feel safe. You feel connected. You're engaged. It could be pets. It could be a memory of somebody, but see if you could start with people who are alive and in your life right now, either in person with our bodies or in person on Zoom or something. Who is it makes you feel safe? And as you're bringing them to mind, notice how that feels in your body. And this could be something Deb Dana suggests we create a portfolio of our ventral vagal anchors and write them down. It could be that you could put them into a little scrapbook with some images, pictures. You could draw something if you're creative. Just to connect with that for another minute. Who makes you feel safe and connected? People, pets. You might be really feel like you resonate with the Dalai Lama. So somebody like that might be there too. And then what small actions invite connection? So this might be, when you're at a store and you meet someone's eyes behind the counter, or you go for a walk in your neighborhood, or you step outside and feel the sun on your face. What do you do? And this might be part of what we're missing now, too, that we can't do these right now with the lockdowns for COVID. But what could you do? And what do you enjoy doing that invites that feeling of connection? And let yourself kind of bring those to life in your mind. Walking into that coffee shop and they know your name or they know what kind of drink you get, or coming on to the daily practices, for instance, reading a favorite book. And then include the where. Where are your places where you feel more cues of safety? And for everybody, it's not going to be home. Some of us live in situations where we're not feeling safe with the people in our home, or there's a lot of associations with the place or something. But see if you could find some physical places that cue safety for you. What might that be right now and in the past as well? For me, it's the forest, the ocean. And then continuing on with kind of integrating the who, what, and where. Just take a few minutes now to go back in time And remember times when you felt like you were in ventral vagal, you felt safe, connected, you were engaged with the people that you were with. And write down some of them if you like. And, we can come back to this as well after. What are some of the times when you felt like that? And it could also be, it's in the evening after the kids are in bed, or it's when I'm on holiday and I get to a new place and I find a new favorite cafe, or, whatever it might be. Let's take a few minutes to come up with a list, some places, some examples, some times, and then really bring it to mind vividly. Use all of your senses. Imagine yourself back in those situations. Remember what it feels like. And as you're doing that, you could be noticing your body and breath. Relax your body, let your breath be full. That will also help in terms of having a vivid recall of those times when you're feeling that way. You might have to go back a long way. When I was in the backyard in my childhood home swinging, or whatever it might be. And if you get kind of stuck or kind of sad, thinking, "Oh, I don't really have that many places or people," or whatever that might be coming up, just to notice that. We could stay connected with ourselves. Notice if we're shaming ourselves or making ourselves wrong in some way. These are involuntary nervous system responses. And we didn't create the experiences that we've had, especially as a child. We don't decide to be in an unsafe situation. So see if you could be kind of open in that sense, in the sense of observing and noticing without shaming. And then for about another minute or so, just continue that wherever that's taking you. And then before we move on from this, I wanted to Just draw our attention to the who. So, in this question, we're really looking at other people who we feel safe around and connected around. But there's also our inner experience with ourselves, and in particular, the inner critic. So, it's very possible that we don't feel safe and connected with ourselves. That's one of the main results of trauma, of traumatic experiences, is that we disconnect from ourselves. And in the sense of this, what it really means is that we're not really open to this nurturing ventral vagal, even within ourselves. So it makes it much more difficult to feel connected to other people and to take that in when we do feel safe and connected. Pets tend to be a little bit easier for many people. They still have, especially if it's a mammal pet, like a cat or dog or horse or something. And just to sit with for a moment, am I one of those people? Do I feel safe and connected to be alone with myself? And notice what comes up. Notice any changes in your heart rate, your breathing, your body. And notice that whatever your situation is in this, and also where you are on this healing journey around not shaming yourself, around not listening to the inner critic, just to notice that we're all somewhere on this continuum. We can't get away from that. One of the effects of trauma is that we disconnect, and often we really turn against ourselves. And one of the hallmarks of healing is that we're on our own side, we're encouraging and kind with ourselves. Just to bring that into the picture. And we have our experiences in the past, and we have the present. And we're not necessarily, well, for sure, we're not the same now as we were in the past. And we're not necessarily trapped in the past. We can work with this. So this is something that we could take on as homework, is the who, what, where, and when, and to create a portfolio of these anchors. And in the past, I've made notes on my phone of things that would downregulate me. And certainly this could be a place for that. Or on a recipe card, an index card, put it in your bag or something so you have it with you, post it around the house. What are your anchors that help you feel safe? And then we could start doing them more. So we're not going to be able to jump into all of them all the time. But if we're in that dorsal vagal, I can't cope, is there anything on your list that is doable? And could you kind of move into small actions that would help to kind of turn that around? So the inquiry, some of this is similar to last week. So the setup with this is over on the left, outside of our body on the left, we're looking at our beliefs and conditioning. And this is really important with nervous system because all of these beliefs are conditioned into us from our experiences. And we had no control over who was in our life, especially when we were children. But also, we didn't have any control over how we healed, who we let in. A lot of the times, we still had some pretty unhealthy habits and patterns through our adult life. And it's hard not to shame ourselves for that. But we could kind of step back and look at that and go, that's how I was conditioned. And now I'm starting to really see through that. And on the freedom side, there's this nervous system that's resilient and flexible. We know about it. We know what triggers us. We know what helps to downregulate us, how we can get back into that. So, what is it that's keeping us in the conditioning where we feel helpless to change? So, we feel fear or shut down, or we go into fight or flight. and we feel like we don't know how to get back into a more regulated place. And then we have this on the other side, the freedom is this nervous system that's resilient. So, one of the keys for me that I think that might be useful to look at is this reverse inquiry statement. I know how, and I know I can rely on regulating my ventral vagal system of connection. And that's related to feeling safe to be in connection with myself and others. So, where are you at with that right now? And if you say, I know I can count on my ventral vagal system, I know I can come back into regulation, and it feels like, oh, that's not very often, or that's not likely. Then we kind of look at it and see, well, what is it that's in the way? So you could continue if you want from the page before where we're talking about the who, what, when, and where. Or you could go into one of these inquiries, and we'll do this for about 5 minutes so you'll have time. So notice your physical body, notice your breath. And with these inquiries, we're kind of making a statement that may not feel true. And then we're seeing what is in the way. What is it that needs to be let go of or changed before I would actually feel that way? And if you find that your mind is wandering, just bring it back. Can you regulate yourself? And if not, what's in the way of that? There must be something that's activating or that's triggering you that's in the way of feeling safe and regulated, connected, calm, relaxed in your body and breath. So let your attention be partly in your body, in the experience of sensation in the nervous system. You could be looking to see, why is this particular feeling here right now? What is it trying to tell me? Is it familiar? Have I felt it when I was a child? You could be working with the energy, see what comes up. Use the tools, tapping and different tools to stay present in this moment. We can always back away a bit, take a few breaths. We're going to finish up in about a minute or so. So make some notes or jot things down or just make a mental note. If I wanted to continue with this, we could do that. Or you might just come into the ventral vagal, notice, remember a time when you did feel really connected and regulated and safe. Let yourself feel that again in your body. And then as you're ready, come back to the group.